Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
Nolan's morning started 5 hours before shift change. Habit, not discipline. Early hours were the only time a man could think without someone in his ear. Born in Havana Nueva, a cylinder parked over Mars' rust belt, he'd grown up walking bare steel. At 47, not much was different. He still paced the corridors like he owned them, not from rank, just time. The axial corridor vibrated with reactor cycling. Amber strips lit the path. The air carried the usual tang of copper and scrubber resin. Nolan stopped at a viewport. Beyond the glass, the Nemrax veil shifted like a wounded sky. Clouds of ionized ash twisting in electromagnetic currents, torn by silent blacklight storms. Every few minutes, a static bolt ripped across the field, bright enough to sting his retinas. Galloglass Station drifted in the violet dust of the Nemrax veil, a silver framework isolated in deep space. Its structure consisted of concentric rings with antennae and weapon mounts, blinking with signal lights. The outer hull was made of reactive metamaterial, armored with 10-meter plates over radiation coils built to repel incoming warheads. 4 equatorial rail rings, each a kilometer wide, rotated in opposing directions to generate the force needed for high-velocity projectile launches. Shield panels folded around the core, each one serving as a conduit for the station's energy-based defenses. Humanity called such installations lanterns, built for 2 purposes: to watch the frontier and to serve as either beacons or warnings to anything that crossed it. Galloglass, Lantern Fortress 37K, was the farthest from Earth's reach, so remote that even Fleet Command's tight beam updates arrived weeks out of date. A garrison of 87 officers, enlisted, and civilian scientists kept its systems running. Fleet placed Galloglass here because nothing could see through Nemrax. Not Veilborn scouts, not data thieves, not even AI prediction nodes. The Veil scrambled everything. That made it hell for long-range comms, and perfect for Sentinels who didn't expect backup. He checked his wrist slate as he passed the inner ring junction. Standard diagnostics. Engineering flagged a fluctuation in fusion loop beta around 0200, nothing dangerous. Chief Vukovic had already stabilized it by the time it registered. One of the exterior drones, K-14, dropped off telemetry just after 0100, probably a micrometeorite. And Mendoza wrapped her last weapons drill with near-perfect scores again. Just another quiet night watching deep space lie to sensors. Most of the crew ran on routine. That was the only way to survive out here. Edge of known space, signal drift, and weeks without real contact. Lieutenant Aurelia Mendoza handled weapons and tactical. She kept a St. Michael medallion tucked under her collar, kissed it before every drill, then swore like a demolitions grunt when the live fire started. No one outshot her. No one wanted to try. Chief Tomasz Vukovic, engineering, treated the fusion cores like altar organs. Tune them, maintain them, or the whole cathedral went up in plasma. He wore a gold hoop in one ear, a superstition from his grandmother, and chewed salt-dried tobacco when the alarms kicked in. Ensign Darius Holt managed sensors and data flow. Still young, eyes too bright. Always tracking gravitic shifts and flare patterns like a kid watching weather. Not built for war, but good with numbers. The kind who survived by keeping everyone else a step ahead. Commander Seth Green was Nolan's second. Quiet, steel-jawed, always reading logs no one asked him to read. He quoted doctrine instead of scripture. When he spoke, people listened. If Nolan was the weight on the station, Green was the tension holding it together. Days blurred, simulated boarding drills, hull inspections, firing routines, half-broken mental health rituals, poetry night or cook what's left dinners, where galley staff turned ration scraps into either weird masterpieces or crimes against food. Nolan let it run. Discipline didn't mean choking the human out of people. It meant giving them something to fight for, besides orders. At 0307, the spike hit the comm net. "Unscheduled transmission," Holt said, fingers locked on his console. "Not Terran registry. Unknown protocol structure." Bridge lights dropped to combat low. The main display pulsed violet, flickering with a shifting pattern of jagged alien symbols. Translation AIs scrambled, 12 syntax passes in under 5 seconds. Then a broken overlay cracked through. "Help. Hunters near. Oathkeepers pass." The room went still. Commander Green moved first, voice flat. "Could be bait, false distress. Classic hook." Nolan nodded. "Could be." The symbols repeated again. Then again. Rhythmic. Not random. "Language lies," Nolan muttered. "Rhythm doesn't." He turned toward Holt. "Tight beam response. Tier 7 encryption. Identify us. Offer shelter. Ask for verification." Holt blinked, nodded, keyed in the message. No one spoke. A shape took form in the center holosphere. 3 ships, narrow and long, bleeding atmosphere from punctures in their opalescent hulls. Lorian escort frigates. Their drives pulsed like dying hearts. One flickered so erratically it looked ready to tear itself apart. The schematic faded, replaced by a figure, humanoid in outline, but crystalline in structure, refracting the bridge lights in shards of shifting color. 6 arms folded tightly to its thorax. When it spoke, the translator rendered its voice like chimes underwater, distorted by interference and tension. "I am Speaker Talith of the Lorian Commonwealth," it said. "We flee the Veilborn. Request sanctuary under Articles of Mutual Mercy." Green stepped forward, arms crossed. "Terran Collective hasn't signed any such articles." Nolan didn't look at him. "Doesn't matter right now." He addressed the transmission, voice steady. "Galloglass Station grants you safe harbor. Docking arms are deploying. Follow the beacon. You'll be met at Cradle Bay." The Lorian dipped its head in a pattern that suggested gratitude, hard to read through the refraction. Its voice returned, fainter now. "Hunters near. They do not parley." The feed cut. Silence fell across the bridge. No one moved. Nolan gave the order. "Bring them in." Red alert hit like a hammer. Sirens, lockdown seals, override klaxons. Holt's voice was sharp. Multiple contacts, 9 ships vectoring in fast. Triangular hulls, no visible propulsion signature. Configuration matches Veilborn destroyers. On screen, they phased into visibility. Black like a starless cutout, absorbing light. Edges shimmered with nebular distortion. Like they weren't just cloaked, they were subtracting reality. "Capacitors charging," Holt added. "They're powering weapons. Particle shear beams." A violet beam lashed across the void. Galloglass jolted under impact. Bulkheads groaned. The shield petals lit up, force fields blooming green-white as they bled energy into space. "Shields down to 73%, Vukovic called over the comm grid. Mendoza didn't wait. "Returning fire." The station's rail ring spun into a blur. Hyperdense slugs fired at fractional light speed, smashing into the nearest destroyer. One hit clean. The enemy hull cracked, not exploded, just folded around the wound like liquid armor. "They're self-repairing," Commander Green growled. "Silver nanite fog, reknitting the damage." Another beam sliced across the dorsal arc. Lights flickered. Static filled half the channels. "Lorian ships entering Cradle Bay now," Holt said. "They're overlapping their lattice shields with ours." Nolan gave a tight nod. "Good. Mendoza, sync fire control with their targeting lattice. Green, feed them telemetry." He opened shipwide comms, voice level. "All hands. We hold the line." On Deck 7, medics felt the steel behind those words. Sister Inez Okoye tightened tourniquets while whispering under her breath, Hold the line, we hold the soul. Missile ports opened. Kinetic payloads screamed into the haze. Tungsten jackets, no warheads, just raw mass moving at stupid speeds. Trails carved through the nebular fog like knives through smoke. Enemy drones launched in response, smaller than fighters, shaped like blades. They didn't fly. They swarmed. No formations, just pure response patterning. Each drone moved as if it already knew where the slugs would land. Pattern resolution, adaptive fractal matrix, Holt said, voice clipped. They're reacting mid-flight. Every engagement updates the swarm. Means they learn, Mendoza said, so we make it hurt. She fed false telemetry across one flank, targeting pings from a dead launch cradle. The swarm shifted, chasing shadows. Nolan saw the moment. Fire. Cross pattern. High dispersion. Rail coils flared. Slugs punched in from an oblique angle. 3 drones caught the brunt, spun apart in molten chunks. The rest peeled off, some colliding, some shattering under stress. A wave of light cut through the wreckage. The Lorian ships had entered firing position, moving like glass knives, their lattice beams slicing through drone gaps created by Mendoza's trap. For a second, the timing was perfect. Human slugs displaced. Lorian fire executed. Green read the sequence like a chessboard. Lock in joint targeting protocols. No wasted shots. Make every opening count. The station groaned again as veil-borne beams scraped the outer hull. Lights flickered. "Shield bleed in Sector 5, Vukovic called. "Coil integrity holding. For now." Inside the station, crew stumbled as the G-forces rolled. Fire suppression foam vented in corridors that hadn't been hit. Cooling vents hissed where sensors fried from overload. Medbay took a jolt. Power blinked. Monitors stuttered. Sister Okoye didn't flinch. She reset the trauma bed by hand and kept pressure on a bleeding crewman's thigh. "Breathe. We're still here," she said. "We're still holding." On the bridge, Nolan stayed fixed to the holosphere. Drones thinned. Slugs burned through fuel mass. Both sides adapted by the second. But the Veilborn weren't flinching. They were testing. And they hadn't even brought in their heavy hitters yet. "How long until Fleet hears the burst and sends help?" Nolan asked, still watching the holosphere. Holt didn't turn from his console. "Best case, 31 hours. Worst case..." He stopped. Didn't need to finish it. "Then we buy 31 hours, Nolan said. He keyed direct to engineering. "Vukovic, I need the ugliest trick you've got." There was a pause. Then the engineer came back laughing. He responded with the fervor of a pyromaniac offered gasoline. "Give me permission to vent the outer coolant arrays. We'll flood local space with cryogenic helium. Turn the nebula into a funhouse mirror. Their thermals will choke." "Will it blind our sensors too?" Green asked. "Yes," Vukovic said, "but it'll screw theirs harder." "Do it," Nolan ordered. "Make it loud!" On engineering deck 2, Vukovic grabbed the nearest manual override, cranked open the coolant release protocols, and punched the purge command himself. Valves clanked like old dock doors. Pressure hissed. Outside the station, long blue ribbons of supercooled helium vented into space, boiling into ghost trails that scattered every targeting laser, every infrared lock. Bridge sensors howled with false echoes. Feedback bounced through tactical feeds. Holt struggled to isolate friend from foe. "Telemetry corrupted," he said, recalibrating via gravitational lensing. "Working." In the mist, the Lorian ships didn't hesitate. They shifted formation, a tight spiral cluster that circled the outer edge of the vapor cloud. Light refracted off their sails, mimicking false drive signatures, baiting the Veilborn fleet inward. Nolan saw the gap open. "Execute full broadside, all 4 rings." Mendoza didn't ask twice. "Firing." The rail coils lit up, each slug white-hot from overcharge, tearing into the cloud like spears through smoke. One destroyer took a triple hit. The impact sheared armor from its hull, spun the ship off axis, venting pressure in 6 directions. It looked dead. Then it fractured. The broken ship didn't die, it split. Segments separated clean, rerouting thrust, forming 3 smaller vessels, each still armed, still moving. "They're modular," Commander Green said. "Every piece is a weapon." Mendoza stared at the holosphere, knuckles white on the targeting pad. "Then we break them smaller." Deck 12 ruptured. The pressure loss warning sounded 1 second before the air vanished. 2 crew were thrown into vacuum before the blast shutters sealed. Emergency dampers kicked in late. Sparks rained across the corridor before the lights went black. Nolan watched the internal feed stutter, then cut. "Report," he said. "Bulkhead breach. Damage control bots in transit. Structural stress spreading along port rams 4 through 6, Green answered, scrolling fast through live telemetry. "We've got 2 more compartments on the edge." Casualty feed updated. Lieutenant Reiko Tan, KIA. Specialist Hugo Njenga, MIA. Nolan felt each name land like a nail in the coffin of his heart, but buried it beneath urgency. Right now, he needed solutions. Holt's voice cracked through the comms. "We're almost dry on slugs. 1 more salvo, maybe 2, and we're down to plasma torpedoes. Those won't hold targeting in this interference." "Options?" Green asked. "Not good ones." Nolan weighed choices. They could switch to plasma torpedoes, but the nebula's electromagnetic static made those unreliable. Then a memory surfaced. His academy thesis on gravitic harmonics. In the Lorien formation, he saw something. A beam signature, low resonance, clean geometry. Theory only. Never deployed. He started calculating angles in his head. "Feed coordinates of enemy command node to Lorien speaker," he ordered. "Specifically their lattice beam array. Aim for the Reborn command node. Center vessel, 2nd tier. They might scramble control links." "Won't that burn right through us too?" Mendoza asked. "Only if they miss," Nolan said, "and I don't think they will." Holt transmitted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Lorien ships rotated, forming a triangular lattice with micro-adjustments. Power surged into a single vector. The beam fired. There was no flash, just a pulse in the black. The enemy formation stuttered. Drones froze mid-flight. Destroyers twitched off axis. Then something critical failed. The Reborn command node ruptured in silence. Fire didn't blossom. It collapsed inward, a controlled implosion. Reactors folding into gravitational chaos. Secondary ships followed, either linked or lost. 3 went dark, drifting. 2 detonated. A short-lived cheer passed through the bridge, raw, instinctual. Then new contacts flared into the sensor grid, massive, different configuration. 2 capital-class warships emerged, colossi, each longer than a Terran dreadnought, mantled in energy that writhed like dark thunderclouds. Holt read the signal aloud. "They've got 10 times our firepower." Mendoza crossed herself with 2 fingers, lips forming Santa Maria. Silence settled across the bridge. Nolan stepped forward, calm as ever. He keyed the comm grid and pushed the broadcast to full station coverage. Crew decks, engineering, medbay, docking cradle, and the Lorien ship lattice. He spoke like it wasn't the end of anything, just another shift. "People of Galloglass, Lorien allies under our shield, hear this." He paused, not for effect, but to make space for the weight. "We were never meant to survive this. The math said so. The weapons said so. The enemy said so. But the math didn't factor in stubbornness. The weapons didn't account for grit. And the enemy forgot what a cornered species can do when no one's left to call." The bridge stayed dead quiet. Holt's hand hovered over a flickering screen. Mendoza stood frozen, waiting for the next order. No one moved. "We pledged to hold this post alone. Tonight, we're not alone. That doesn't mean we get to back down. That means we get to show them what holding the line really looks like. He turned slightly, scanning the holosphere. Battle damage, dying ships, friendly losses, live feeds from ruined compartments. What happens here will echo, he said. Not in headlines, not in medals, but in silence, the kind that predators feel before they choose their next target. He looked up, not to the crew, to the walls, the station, the whole construct he'd lived inside for years. We do this right, and the dark remembers us. He cut the transmission. The first capital ship opened fire. A gravitic torpedo left its hull with no warning. Space around it twisted, light bent sideways. Shields lit up red, then white, then black. "Impact stress, 92%, Vukovic shouted over comms. "Port ring 5 is cracked. Magnetic clamps are barely holding." A second torpedo arced in, too fast. The outer hull flexed under the hit. Bulkheads groaned. Decks rippled like someone had slapped sheet metal with a god's hand. Lockdown foam auto-deployed in 6 corridors. 4 people were already dead. "Sir," Green said, voice low, "this isn't sustainable." Nolan didn't look away from the holosphere. "Cargo drones still idle?" Holt blinked. "Mostly. Why?" "Get me a lattice formation. Emergency batteries only. Antimatter cores." Green turned his head sharply. "At that range, detonation will hit us too." "Then we time it right," Nolan said. "No margin, no backup, just exact execution." Mendoza was already moving, feeding launch coordinates. On deck 4, the drone bay opened like a wound. 6 cargo drones drifted out, blocky, slow, painted in hazard yellow. Each carried an emergency core wrapped in directional shielding and magnetic clutches, set to blow if touched or pinged wrong. They drifted like garbage. The Veilborn didn't even fire on them. "Hold," Nolan said. "Let them get cocky." 30 seconds. "Closer." 12. "Closer." Green watched the readouts. Inside optimal kill radius. Nolan didn't raise his voice. "Now!" Holt hit the trigger. Matter met antimatter. The explosion didn't light up space. It erased part of it. A white-violet surge flattened everything in the cone. The blast vaporized shielding, boiled metal, and cracked space-time itself in a micro-rip that flared and sealed a second later. When the screens cleared, one of the enemy capitals was gone. Just shredded debris and a collapsing magnetic signature. The second ship drifted, venting plasma, half of its forward array hanging limp like a broken jaw. For half a second, it looked like they had won. Then the return fire came. A lance beam, broad as a city street, carved across gallo glass. The blast hit port rams 4 through 6. Hull plating peeled away like skin. One support spar sheared off and tumbled into the veil. Internal alarm screamed. 2 decks decompressed. Life support dropped to 0. Operator Caleb Weir, KIA. Petty Officer Sung-Hee Liao, KIA. The red silhouettes blinked once on the screen, then held. Sensor pings lit up again. This time, the math didn't match enemy signature. "Contacts. New vector. Inbound from subspace fracture," Holt said. "Human drive patterns. Confirmed Terran collective." 6 destroyers dropped into real space like shrapnel through silk, rippling gravity wells behind them, burning cold in the wake. Sleek hulls, sharp wings, and mass drivers already charging. IFF tags locked in. "Knight-errant squadron," Holt said. "Lead ship, St. Vincent." A direct channel opened before Nolan even called for it. "Knight-errant to Gallowglass," a deep voice crackled over bridge comms. Tired, steady, a rasp from someone who smoked through battle briefings. "Brigadier Roberto de Souza speaking. Heard you were throwing a party without us. Bringing sparklers." Nolan allowed himself one short exhale through his nose. "You're late." "We're pretty. Pick one." The St. Vincent didn't wait for permission. Its mass drivers fired first. Flechette barrages designed not to destroy, but shred. Each round fractured on impact into monomolecular shards, bypassing veil-borne regenerative layers. One of the enemy support ships staggered, parts of its hull turning to molten static before its integrity fields collapsed. Other destroyers followed, torpedoes launched on magnetic rails, igniting mid-arc into fusion-laced detonations. Gallowglass's remaining slug coils came online to match timing. But it was the Lorian beam lattice that sealed the tactic. Their geometry bent, fire lanes opened, human rounds punched, Lorian focus carved paths through the Veilborn like heat through frost. Adaptive cross patterns confirmed, Mendoza said. They're opening gaps for us. Then put steel in the gaps, Green said. It took 4 minutes. The remaining Veilborn capital writhed as its core began to fail, its hull folded inward, like a dead spider curling around nothing. The explosion came not from weapons, but from inside, a final systems collapse that shattered everything into spinning ruin. No cheers, just silence. Then slow breathing. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the absence of pressure alarms and emergency klaxons, like a lung finally exhaled, but only halfway. On the outer hull, patch drones crawled through debris fields, sealing breaches with quick coag epoxy and carbon foam. Some compartments would never be pressurized again. One corridor was just gone, torn off the ring like someone had pulled a rib out of the station's side. Medbay had overflowed 10 minutes ago. Cots now lined the gymnasium, emergency beds pulled from crash lockers. IV bags hung from weight bars. Crew lay still, some breathing, some barely. Sister Okoye moved from body to body, her uniform stained, gloves gone. She used her bare hands now. Pressure, heat, whatever worked. "Where's the next one?" she called out. "Deck 9, concussion, partial amputation," someone replied over comms. "I'm already there," said another voice. Lorian. They'd brought help. Crystalline tendrils moved with surgical precision, tips glowing with nanite light. Lorian healers worked shoulder to shoulder with Terran medics, their movements too precise to be human. But the care, the quiet urgency, was universal. In an auxiliary machine bay, techs from both sides picked apart a still-smoking Veilborn drone. It pulsed faintly, its core not quite dead. "We should slag it," one engineer muttered. "Not yet," another replied. "Might be something we can use." On the open comms, human and Lorian crews traded diagnostics, joked about tool compatibility, and swore in 3 languages while trying to mate a Terran repair sled to a Lorian fuel intake. No celebration, no victory speeches. Just people doing what they could to keep the station breathing. In the ops amphitheater, the lighting was still flickering. 2 panels blown, one sparking slightly behind the main holotank. No one cared. They weren't there for the decor. Nolan stood at the center console with Commander Green and Mendoza on his flank. Chief Vukovic leaned on the edge of the deck rail, sleeve still scorched. Across from them, Speaker Talith hovered motionless, light rippling across his crystal plates. Brigadier Roberto de Sousa stood off to the side, arms crossed, helmet clipped to his hip. Above them, the holosphere spun telemetry data, wreckage fields, structural losses, enemy debris still drifting at the Veil's edge. Mendoza tapped into the feed. No remaining Veilborn drive signatures within 1 light hour. Nothing active. No movement. "Doesn't mean they're gone," Green said. "No," Nolan said. "Just quiet. Could mean they're listening." Vukovic grunted. "Then let's speak loud." De Sousa cracked his neck and finally stepped forward. "Knight Errant will stay in perimeter orbit. Our hull's held. We've got 2 working spinal arrays and a full magazine." He nodded toward the Lorian. "With respect, Commonwealth Tech bought us time. Human rounds ended it. We work together. We win. Simple math." Talith shimmered, His voice echoed through the chamber. The Veilborn do not treat with those they fail to kill. That alone makes today rare. He paused, facets dimming, then reigniting. We owe more than orbiting guns. Nolan folded his hands. Then let's talk about tomorrow. Humanity's known of your people for 80 years, yet bureaucracy has kept us strangers. Tonight, you and our dead have cut through that fog. Talith's facets brightened, a Lorian blush. We share a proverb. Where shields interlock, new constellations are born. Let this be our dawn. D'Souza looked over at Nolan. We don't have poetry like that. Just whiskey. I'll take both, Nolan said. No oaths, no ceremonies. Just understanding. The real kind, earned in smoke and blood. Later, Nolan walked the corridor near Section 12, what was left of it. Hull sealant was still fresh, still off-gassing that chemical bite. The wall where the breach happened was now a dull gray patchwork of foam plating and steel ribs. Just beyond it, vacuum still waited. Silent, patient. He paused beside a temporary memorial holo. Operator Caleb Weir, Petty Officer Sung-Hee Liao. Faces, names, ranks. Below them, a faint shimmer. The Lorian crew lost in the cradle bay. Their names were unreadable to human tongues, displayed as soft chime tones and fractal glyphs. He watched them cycle once, then again. Commander Green approached from the opposite hall, data slate in one hand, arm in a compression brace. He looked like hell. So did everyone. Command acknowledged the buoy, Green said. Latency's still riding out. 4 hours before full reply. But we got the header. They read us. Nolan didn't look up from the wall. They send anything useful? Condolences. Preliminary review. Request for detailed sitrep and tech debrief. Anything about protocol violation? Green snorted. Buried. Vague language. Probably waiting to see if anyone survives long enough to take the heat. Nolan finally turned. You write the report. Green raised an eyebrow. You sure? You're the one who keeps reading logs no one asked you to read. Green's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. He nodded. They stood there for a few seconds longer. No rush. You ever wonder if the watch is worth it? Green finally asked. Everything we give to be here? What we lose? Nolan didn't answer right away. Then, he said, everything worth doing starts alone. Someone's got to stand when it's just dust and silence. Otherwise, nothing comes after. Another pause. No reply. Just two officers surrounded by the soft hum of patched systems and recycled air. Green shifted the slate under one arm. We still have coffee? Depends on what Vukovic didn't reroute to cool the coils. I'll take that gamble. They walked together, quiet, slow, limping toward the next shift. The docking concourse still stank of burned wiring and plasma scoring. Ozone mixed with Lorian disinfectant, a faint floral scent that glowed blue in low light. Patch crews moved in teams. Terran techs, Lorian engineers, working side by side under open system bays and half-lit bulkheads. In the middle of the floor sat the cracked remains of a Veilborn drone. Part of its core was still pulsing, a soft, rhythmic thrum like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Roberto D'Souza stood over it with his arms folded and a helmet under one arm. He looked tired, dust on his boots, cuts on his neck he hadn't even bothered to clean. Spook teams are gonna fight over this, he muttered. Quantum sync nodes, organic overlays, full hive model AI. This thing ran on ghosts and stolen gravity. Talith stood nearby, silent. The Lorian finally spoke, tone quieter than usual. Be cautious, Brigadier. The Veilborn do not build with material alone. They encode memory, intent, malice. Their technology whispers corruption to those who listen too closely. D'Souza smirked. First thing I'm gonna do is lock it in a hermetic vault inside a sun." Laughter rippled, and in that sound an alliance coalesced. He nudged the drone's chassis with his boot. It didn't move, but something shifted inside. A twitch of veins, a flicker of internal gel. Nolan arrived then, flanked by Commander Green and a security detail. His eyes scanned the floor, the drone, the tension. "We torch it," he said. "Now." A Terran technician stepped forward. "Sir, it's not unstable. We might—" Nolan cut him off with a look. Not anger, just certainty. "We don't study what tried to erase us. We burn it, and we make notes from the ash." Talith inclined his head. "Wise." D'Souza shrugged. "You want me to say it? Fine. That's the cleanest command decision I've heard in weeks." Two techs carried in a portable incinerator sled. The drone's core flickered faster as they approached, but it didn't resist. It just watched. Then it burned. Quiet. No screams. Just curling smoke, acrid and sour. Lorian and Terran eyes met across the concourse. No oaths, no anthem. Just a nod. Later on, Nolan sat alone in his quarters with a pen in one hand. Real ink. Real polymer vellum. Old habit. One that forced you to mean what you wrote. He didn't write to command. They'd get the sitrep. He wrote to Reikotan's father, to Sung-Hee Liao's partner, to the family of specialist Nyenga, MIA confirmed dead after internal sensors finally gave a clear picture of the blown corridor. He didn't embellish. He described actions. He described bravery. He described usefulness. That word mattered in war. No abstractions. No philosophy. These weren't eulogies. They were affirmations. Your people mattered. They stood the line. Their deaths didn't buy glory. They bought time. He paused once, fingers over a line he couldn't finish, then crossed it out. Tried again. By the end, his hand ached. He signed each letter. In shared loss and enduring respect. Captain Esteban M. Nolan. He set the pen down. Let the quiet settle. Repairs would take weeks. New crews were already in warp. Fresh bodies. More fabricators. Replacement weapons. Galloglass wouldn't be empty again for a long time. Nolan stood in the cupola, the station's highest deck, where armored glass showed the true color of Nemrax beyond the haze. The veil shimmered. Static bled off its storm front. Somewhere out there, more was coming. He could feel it. Behind him, Holt stepped into view, hands behind his back, face pale from exhaustion. "Sir," he said, "you think the Veilborn come back?" "They always do," Nolan replied. He didn't blink, just placed a steady hand on Holt's shoulder. "But this time, we're not alone." Outside, St. Vincent held position on Galloglass's starboard edge. Its hull lights flashed once in silent salute. Behind it, the Lorian frigates glided on folded sails, arcs of crystal and fire. Emergency beacons marked safe lanes through the veil now, light cutting paths through chaos. Holt exhaled a breath he hadn't noticed holding. "I always thought space would feel empty." "It did," Nolan agreed. "Until tonight." Green's voice crackled over comms. "Captain, command requests preliminary strategic hot wash, and Brigadier D'Souza says he brought contraband whiskey." Nolan smiled. "On my way." He set the coffee aside, savoring for one last second the hush of engines and newfound fellowship thrumming in the bones of his station. Then he squared his shoulders and walked toward tomorrow. Outside, the Nemrax Veil Nebula rolled on, majestic, indifferent, and yet to those who had just shared fire and faith beneath its veils, unmistakably alive with promise. And for once, the edge of known space felt like more than a dead outpost. It felt like the start of something bigger. And the long watch of Captain Esteban Nolan had only just begun.